Picture this. A modern emergency room doctor has access to ultrasounds, epidurals, surgical teams, and blood banks. They work 12-hour shifts before handing responsibility to a colleague. Now imagine carrying more pressure than that doctor, but alone, in a flickering, candle-lit room, with nothing but your hands and centuries-old knowledge passed down in whispers. This was the reality of a medieval midwife. While we associate life-saving heroics with modern medicine, the truth is far more humbling. These forgotten women wielded power that would terrify today's medical professionals. When labor complications arose at 3 in the morning, there was no calling for backup, no sterile operating theater, no morphine to dull the screams echoing through timber walls. There was only her. One woman's knowledge standing between entire bloodlines and extinction. One pair of hands that had delivered princes and paupers alike, guided by intuition honed through decades of witnessing both miracles and tragedies unfold in birthing chambers across medieval Europe. But here's the question that should haunt every viewer. In our age of Netflix distractions and delivery apps, do you possess even a fraction of the psychological fortitude these women carried daily? Could you shoulder the weight of knowing that your next decision determines whether a family celebrates or mourn, whether a community's future midwife survives her own birth? Medieval midwifery wasn't just a profession, it was a sacred burden wrapped in mortal terror, demanding everything from those brave enough to answer its call. The numbers are staggering. 1 in 3 mothers died in childbirth. Half of all infants never saw their first birthday. In our sanitized world, where pregnancy announcements come with digital photo shoots and baby shower registries, these statistics feel like ancient mythology. They're not. For a medieval midwife, death wasn't a medical failure. It was Tuesday. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Living shoulder to shoulder with mortality didn't break these women. It forged them into something we've lost entirely. Human beings capable of functioning at peak performance while death breathed down their necks. Modern doctors panic when they lose a patient. Medieval midwives delivered the next baby an hour later. They developed what can only be described as supernatural diagnostic abilities. A slight change in pulse rhythm at the wrist meant hemorrhaging was coming. The way a woman's eyes tracked movement revealed dangerous blood pressure spikes. These weren't medical miracles. They were the result of minds sharpened by constant exposure to life's most brutal teacher, survival necessity. We've traded this resilience for the illusion of safety. Our ambulances and emergency rooms have made us psychologically fragile. We crumble under stress that medieval women navigated daily while maintaining steady hands and clear judgment. Consider this. When did you last face genuine life or death responsibility? When did you last make a decision knowing that failure meant someone's child would never draw breath? These women didn't just survive death's daily presence. They mastered it. They learned to read the subtle signs of approaching tragedy and, more remarkably, how to snatch life from death's very grasp using nothing but experience, intuition, and unbreakable mental fortitude.
While medieval universities debated Aristotelian theories in Latin, an entirely different education system operated in shadows, one that would make Harvard Medical School look like amateur hour. Medieval midwives had created something unprecedented, a continent-spanning network of specialized knowledge that traveled through whispered conversations between women. No diplomas, no textbooks, textbooks, just pure, distilled expertise passed from weathered hands to eager pupils across generations. Their botanical knowledge would shame modern pharmacologists. They knew precisely which herbs could stop hemorrhaging, which mushrooms induced labor safely, and which tree barks provided natural anesthesia. But this wasn't folk medicine. It was sophisticated chemistry, learned through trial, error, and meticulous observation. They understood female anatomy better than the male physicians who claimed authority over women's bodies. While doctors still believed in wandering wombs, midwives mapped the cervix, tracked hormonal cycles, and developed techniques for breech births that wouldn't be officially discovered by medical institutions for centuries. Yet here lies the cruel irony. This vast knowledge network was simultaneously essential and condemned. The same hands that saved noble heirs could be accused of witchcraft if a birth went wrong. The same herbal remedies that eased suffering could be twisted into evidence of supernatural evil. Today, we've traded this distributed wisdom for centralized medical monopolies. Our doctors know what textbooks teach, but they've lost the deep embodied knowledge that comes from working intimately with bodies for decades. When was the last time your doctor could read your health through touch alone? When could they identify your condition by observing subtle changes others missed? Medieval midwives proved something we've forgotten. True expertise doesn't come from institutions. It emerges from lived experience, careful observation, and knowledge networks built on trust rather than credentials.
Here, where history plays its cruelest joke on our assumptions about progress, a medieval midwife's birthing stool, carved from oak, designed to let gravity assist delivery while supporting the mother's back, was infinitely more humane than the flat-on-back position that dominated hospitals for centuries afterward. Yet we abandoned this wisdom for the convenience of male doctors who preferred women immobilized and accessible. Their herb gardens weren't quaint cottage decoration. They were sophisticated pharmacy. Willow bark for pain relief contained the same active ingredient as modern aspirin. Ergot fungus controlled hemorrhaging more effectively than many contemporary drugs. Lavender and chamomile weren't just pleasant scents. They were precisely calibrated anxiolytics that calmed laboring mothers without compromising the birth process. But perhaps most shocking were their instrument, hand-forged delivery forceps crafted by village blacksmiths to each midwife's specification, often caused less trauma than the mass-produced medical instruments that replaced them. These weren't primitive tools. They were bespoke precision instruments tailored through generations of refinement. They worked with natural processes, not against them. While later, scientific medicine fought the female body like an enemy to be conquered, medieval midwives understood birth as a dance requiring partnership. They knew when to intervene and, more crucially, when to wait. Their innovations emerged from desperate constraints. No electricity meant developing techniques that worked by candlelight. No refrigeration meant preserving medicines through drying, fermenting, and careful storage methods that actually enhanced potency. The uncomfortable truth, many advances in obstetrics represented steps backward from medieval wisdom. Progress isn't always progressive. Sometimes we trade effective solutions for impressive ones that serve everyone except the patient. What other modern improvements have we accepted without questioning whether they actually improve anything at all?
touch. That's what separated medieval midwives from every practitioner who followed. Modern doctors stare at screens. Medieval midwives read bodies like ancient cartographers reading unexplored territory. Every ridge, every pulse point, every subtle shift in muscle tension, revealing crucial information about the journey ahead. Their hands possessed what can only be described as supernatural sensitivity. A fingertip placed on a woman's wrist didn't just check for pulse rate. It detected the subtle variations that warned of impending eclampsia hours before visible symptoms appeared. They could feel the baby's position through abdominal walls, predicting breech presentations with accuracy that would humble modern ultrasound technicians. But here's the revelation that challenges everything we believe about medical progress. These women achieved better outcomes than the scientific practitioners who replaced them, not despite their lack of technology, because of it. They understood something we've forgotten. Birth isn't just a mechanical process. It's an intricate dance between body, mind, and spirit. While later doctors focused solely on anatomical mechanics, medieval midwives recognized that a woman's emotional state directly influenced her labor's progress. Fear could stop contractions. Trust could accelerate healing. Spiritual comfort could literally mean the difference between life and death. Their diagnostic abilities bordered on the mystical. They could predict complications not through machines, but through decades of pattern recognition that operated below conscious thought. The way a woman breathed during early labor, the color of her fingernails, how she responded to gentle touch. These weren't superstitions. They were sophisticated diagnostic indicators refined through countless births. We've traded this embodied wisdom for technological dependency. Our doctors can read every machine, but struggle to truly read their patients. When did medical expertise become about interpreting data rather than understanding human being? The uncomfortable question haunting modern medicine: have our machines made us more accurate or just more distant from the people we're supposed to heal?
Every medieval midwife lived with a terrifying paradox. The same knowledge that made her invaluable could get her killed. Picture the impossible tightrope walk. By day, she delivered the Lord's air, her expertise celebrated and rewarded. By night, that same Lord's confessor whispered accusations of witchcraft, pointing to her uncanny ability to save lives others couldn't. How does a woman navigate being simultaneously worshipped and hunted? The witch trials weren't random hysteria. They were systematic campaigns to dismantle women's knowledge networks. Between 1450 and 1750, an estimated 60,000 people were executed for witchcraft. The majority were women. The majority possessed healing knowledge that threatened emerging male medical establishment. Medieval midwives developed survival strategies that would humble modern resistance fighters. They learned to hide in simple place, disguising their most powerful techniques as simple folk remedies. They created coded language systems, passing dangerous knowledge through seemingly innocent conversations about cooking and gardening. They built networks so carefully camouflaged that persecution could claim individual practitioners but never destroy the knowledge itself. The most successful midwives mastered the art of strategic invisibility. They saved lives without claiming credit. They solved impossible cases
cases while deflecting attention to divine intervention or natural causes. They became legendary for their humility, while secretly knowing they possessed skills that surpassed any university-trained physician. Sound familiar? Today, we witness similar dynamics as traditional knowledge gets marginalized by institutional medicine, alternative healers face legal persecution, and time-tested remedies are dismissed without investigation. The methods change, but the pattern remains. Established power structures feel threatened by distributed knowledge they cannot control. But here's what should terrify anyone who values authentic expertise. These women didn't just survive suppression, they thrived underground. They proved that real knowledge doesn't need institutional approval to be effective. They demonstrated that truth persists even when systems try to crush it. The question haunting our own era: when authentic knowledge conflicts with official narratives, do you have the courage to seek truth beyond approved sources? Picture a university lecture hall, sanitized, theoretical, safe. Students scribble notes about procedures they'll never perform, memorizing textbook knowledge that feels abstract and distant. Now, imagine something entirely different. A 13-year-old girl watching her grandmother's weathered hands guide a breech birth, knowing that one wrong move means death for both mother and child. This was the medieval apprenticeship of midwifery, a brutal education that transformed girls into masters of life and death through years of blood, sweat, and genuine terror. These apprenticeships began early, often before puberty, with young girls shadowing experienced midwives through endless nights. They learned by watching, absorbing knowledge through their pores rather than their textbooks. First, they carried supplies. Then they held lanterns while their mentors worked miracles in darkened hovels. Gradually, they earned the privilege of touching, feeling a baby's position, sensing the rhythm of labor, understanding the delicate balance between intervention and patience. But the real education came through failure, when a mother hemorrhaged beyond saving, when twins arrived tangled and blue, when infection claimed lives despite every desperate attempt. These tragedies became their most valuable teachers. Each loss carved wisdom into their soul, teaching them to read the subtle signs that textbooks could never capture. The psychological transformation was profound. These girls evolved from innocent children into women who could face death unflinchingly, who could offer comfort while calculating odds, who could make split-second decisions that determined whether families celebrated or mourned. Unlike our modern educational systems that prioritize theoretical safety nets, these apprentices learned through genuine stakes. They understood that knowledge without experience was useless, that true mastery required surviving the moments when everything went wrong. What emerges from this crucible wasn't just technical skill, but something far more valuable: the unshakable confidence that comes from having faced the worst and found a way forward.
Modern birth is a sterile transaction. A woman enters a hospital as a stranger, delivers under fluorescent lights, surrounded by professionals she's never met, then returns home to navigate motherhood in profound isolation. Medieval birth couldn't have been more different. The village midwife knew everything. She knew that Margaret's mother had died in childbirth 3 decades ago, that Thomas's family carried a history of difficult deliveries, that the baker's wife would need extra support because her husband drank away their saving. This wasn't gossip. It was essential intelligence that shaped every decision, every intervention, every moment of care. When labor began, the entire community mobilized. Neighbors arrived with food, blankets, and experienced hand. Women shared birth stories, offering both practical advice and emotional reassurance. Children were whisked away by familiar faces, returning to find new siblings welcomed by a village that already knew their names. The midwife orchestrated this symphony of support, serving simultaneously as medical professional, social coordinator, and community anchor. This integration made medieval midwives extraordinarily powerful. They held secrets that could topple marriages, witnessed moments of vulnerability that created lifelong bonds, and possessed knowledge that made them indispensable to every family. They were living libraries of human experience, consulted not just for births, but for marriage troubles, family disputes, and community decisions. But power bred vulnerability. When crops failed or plague struck, communities sought scapegoats. The same woman who had safely delivered hundreds of babies could find herself accused of witchcraft if one birth went tragically wrong. Their deep integration meant they couldn't escape community politics. They were simultaneously protected and endangered by their intimate knowledge of everyone's secrets. Today's off-grid communities echo these medieval networks, creating intentional webs of mutual support that institutional healthcare can't replicate. They remind us what we've lost in our pursuit of professional efficiency, the understanding that birth isn't just a medical event, but a community transformation that requires collective wisdom, shared responsibility, and the kind of deep human connection that no hospital can provide.
The year 1847 should have been a triumph for women's health. Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis discovered that hand-washing dramatically reduced maternal mortality in Vienna's hospitals. Yet here's the shocking reality. In those same hospitals, women were dying at rates that would have horrified medieval midwives. The scientific birthing wards boasted mortality rates of 10 to 18%, while traditional midwives routinely achieved rates below 3%. This wasn't an accident. It was the cost of progress. As male physicians claimed authority over birth, centuries of hard-won wisdom vanished overnight. Medieval midwives knew that birthing women needed to move, to squat, to follow their body's instincts. The new medical establishment strapped them to tables, declaring movement unscientific. Ancient knowledge of herbal pain relief was dismissed as superstition, replaced by dangerous interventions that often caused more harm than healing. The emotional toll was devastating. Generations of women found themselves cut off from their mother's knowledge, forced to trust strangers who viewed birth as a medical problem rather than a natural process. The communal support systems that had sustained women for millennia crumbled, replaced by institutional isolation that left new mothers struggling alone with challenges their grandmothers had faced collectively. Traditional techniques that took centuries to perfect were lost in decades. The art of reading labor's rhythms, the subtle positioning adjustments that prevented complications, the emotional support that helped women trust their bodies, all dismissed as primitive folklore by men who had never witnessed a single birth. Today, we're rediscovering these primitive practices with embarrassing frequency. Modern research now confirms what medieval midwives knew instinctively, that movement during labor reduces complications, that emotional support improves outcomes, that birth works best when women feel empowered rather than managed. This pattern repeats throughout history. Impressive new systems replacing effective old ones, not because they work better, but because they appear more sophisticated. The question haunts us. How many other improvements have we embraced without questioning whether they actually improve anything beyond our sense of technological superiority?
Close your eyes and imagine this. It's 2 a.m., rain hammering your roof, when desperate knocking jolts you awake. A terrified husband stands at your door. His wife has been in labor for 18 hours. Something's wrong, and you're the only person within 50 miles who might save them both. No backup, no hospital, no Google, just you, your knowledge, and 2 lives hanging in the balance. Could you carry that weight? Medieval midwives lived this reality daily, and their survival required capabilities most of us can't imagine. Physical stamina to work through multiple sleepless nights while maintaining steady hands and sharp focus. Emotional resilience to witness tragedy without breaking, to comfort grieving families while processing your own failures. Mental agility to diagnose problems through touch alone, making split-second decisions based on subtle cues that textbooks never taught. But the deepest requirement was moral courage, the ability to act decisively when inaction meant death, to take responsibility for outcomes beyond your control, to stand firm in your expertise when everyone else panicked. These women carried the psychological weight of entire communities' survival on their shoulders. Test yourself honestly. When did you last acquire a skill that could genuinely save lives? When did you last take responsibility for outcomes that truly mattered? How many sleepless nights could you endure while maintaining peak performance? Could you make life or death decisions without the safety net of modern institutions? Today's preppers and off-grid communities understand something crucial. Technical knowledge means nothing without the psychological resilience to apply it under pressure. Medieval midwives represent the ultimate synthesis of practical skills, community knowledge, and unshakable mental toughness. Our world grows more uncertain daily. Supply chains break, institutions fail, communities fragment. In such times, we need people who can function independently, who possess genuine expertise, who can lead when systems collapse. The medieval midwife's legacy isn't just historical curiosity. It's a blueprint for the essential human capabilities our uncertain future demand. The question isn't whether you could survive in their world, but whether you're developing the skills to thrive when our modern conveniences inevitably fail. What will you choose to become?